We've been living in sin so long, all the feels are gone. Fella stopped me on the street last night, said everything's alright. Roller coaster, make it through the day upright. It seems your meal ticket is gone, but life goes on. I could never imagine something better. Yeah, right. Now you're cooking on high heat in the middle of the street. Roller coaster, take me to a better time. Let's go! All sing your high line with the roller coaster of life. It's time to all choose your timeline on the roller coaster of life. You seem to easily forget how to place your bet. When everyday life gets you down, you gotta steal the crown. Got to own it. Don't bitch and moan about it, please. God forbid you scrape your knees, and it's nothing to sneeze at. Oh, I've told you over and over again, you gotta get both hands around it and make your own plans. Roller coaster, it's taking over, it's about time. Oh, all sing your high line on the roller coaster of life. You've got to all choose your timeline with the roller coaster of life. I want to go
3-man roster, and today we got the 16-person practice squad. And some of the notable names on that: former All-Pro safety Jordan Poyer, cornerback Dane Jackson, linebacker Jimmy Charlo, defensive tackle Jordan Phillips, running back Frank Gore Jr., and quarterback Shane Buechele. Offensive lineman Travis Clayton, he is part of the International Pathway Program, so he will not count against the 16-player practice squad. We'll get more on those additions and what we just heard from General Manager Brandon Beane when Sal Capaccio joins the show at 3:30. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been suspended. It is the first 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Bills do play the Chiefs in Week 9. The Ravens lock in safety Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year extension worth $100.4 million. $82 million of that is guaranteed. And earlier this morning, the Vikings bringing in a familiar face of their own. They acquire wide receiver Adam Thielen, a conditional 7th in this year's draft, and a 5th in 27. In exchange, they send Carolina a 26 5th-rounder and a 27 4th-rounder. U.S. Ryder Cup captain picks are in. Keegan Bradley does not select himself. Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Patrick Cantlay, Sam Burns, and Cameron Young round out the roster. Brian Koziel will join the show at 5:30 to talk more on the Ryder Cup, which will get underway later on in September. And then some early afternoon baseball. The Yankees up big, 11-0 on the Nationals in the 5th. Then at 7, the Blue Jays host the Twins, while the Mets host Philadelphia. And at 6:30, the Bisons, they're on the road in Indianapolis. That game can be heard on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And a reminder that Sports Talk on WGR, presented by Paramount Plus. You can't count on much these days, but you can always count on Sundays with the NFL on CBS and Paramount Plus. Watch your local NFL games live every Sunday on CBS and Paramount Plus all season long, and visit ParamountPlus.com/NFL to get started today. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
Schopp and the Bulldog.
Uh-oh. Guess what day it is? Guess what day it is? Huh? Anybody?
Monday, Tuesday, hump day is halfway.
It's Mike Schopp.
Mike. What day is it, Mike?
And the Bulldog.
Hey, guess what day it is? Oh, come on. I know you can hear me.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Guess what today is?
It's hump day.
Woo-hoo!
On WGR
Hump Day
Sports Radio 550.
I think you agree that my Washington Nationals visor was the right choice today. 11-0 in the 5th. Wasn't even thinking about, was I? Wasn't even thinking about the fact that they were playing the Yankees at all. Just sort of a random choice. Did a podcast, black shirt. I mean, there's a lot. There's thought that goes into it, but it's usually not very good thought. It's just kind of wasted thought. Had a podcast this morning. Went with the green screen. I have a green screen, aren't I fancy? Really don't know exactly how best to use it. Put a picture of a sunset that I took behind it. That was going to be my backdrop. All very glitchy. Anyway, it was mostly like an orange backdrop. Didn't want... Why did it even start here? The Nationals are down 11-0 in the 5th inning to the Yankees, and we may or may not keep you posted on that one. I just heard that Awaken 180 spot that I recorded just now, and I remember doing it. I can tell that that's the one that I did when my mouth was numb, because I'm just a little bit slower. Like the Novocaine was, I can hear it. You know, that's sort of like how the sound of your own voice maybe sounds weird to you, but everybody else is like, why would that be weird? But it's always like that way to yourself. Now I've gone into this. Sal coming up at 3:30, Steve Palazzolo today. That'll be cool. I want to talk to Brian Koziel, too, about the Ryder Cup team. That's an interesting one with Keegan Bradley, the captain of the team. I mean, everybody thinks playing well enough to deserve to be on the team, but he's the captain and he doesn't choose himself. And I think that is an interesting conversation. So Jordan Poyer is back. This is obviously something I'll bring up with Sal. It's very much like when Trey White happened. And there have been others of these, right? Micah Hyde, was that even last year, where the Bills dip into their past for security. And it's easy to pick on them for that, right? Like 32 teams, all these options. Why do you have to go back into your own Rolodex? Has the show ever sounded older? Your own Rolodex for depth? I don't know. I think it makes sense. And they're not going to do it if they think Poyer is like useless physically, athletically. They've got to have some faith that he can play, on maybe like on a replacement level it would be. And the tiebreaker is that they know him and respect what he knows and what he can impart on younger players. So I guess it's okay. The other side of that coin, though, is Poyer and Trey White. I mean, Trey White was signed, and it was possible that he would start week 1, and it still is. He would, for sure, if he weren't hurt, and we don't know exactly where that stands. I'll get into that in a minute. But the other side of the coin is like, well, on one hand, it's sort of logical, right? You've had good players that they know you know them. There's a safety in that, no pun intended, with Poyer. And so, okay. But if it weren't for, I think I want to say if it just weren't for Josh Allen, it would be these kind of things these are the kind of things that sort of make you nervous, right? Like, what kind of shape am I in at corner if I'm going into my past for Trey White? What kind of shape am I really in at safety if I'm doing this? What kind of shape am I in at wide receiver if I'm signing the, 5 to 10 guys in the last 2 years the Bills have signed, just sort of on the come, like sort of hoping that maybe you find something there, and that really hasn't happened yet, unless I want to include Hollins. I mean, Hollins, I think you'd have to say worked out, but not like that there was much of a ceiling. So Allen, and you don't have to look at it this way, but I think he makes it really hard in an objective way to get nervous for them. He is your pill that you take if you have like a particular form of anxiety and sort of to calm you down. And Allen does that. Like, I want to really kind of investigate these kinds of moves like Poyer. I mean, Poyer is just the practice squad. So like Micah Hyde was, who knows if it even means anything. But, you've got a veteran leader type, even maybe a quasi coach back in the fold, and that can be good on its own merits. But if not for Allen, I'd want to sort of probe this and be like, well, and you still can. It just, for me, only goes so far. Okay, well, how desperate are the times if I'm making these choices, these signings? But I can't, it goes both ways. Like, if the Bills, when the Bills make a big move that everybody would consider positive, the betting lines don't move. And if it were a quarterback, they would. But Joey Bosa or even maybe Von Miller, I don't know for sure that there was no change to what their expectation or what the outside expectations were in terms of the betting markets. But I doubt that there was. I don't think there's anything they can do. That's what I kind of came up with yesterday when thinking about the cuts and the roster. Like, nothing here is probably going to mean a lot, if anything. So, I mean, it's a little bit depressing. But if not for Allen, you might really wonder what this is going to look like. Bishop, Trey White, Hairston hurt, maybe White is even hurt. What Brandon Beane said today leaves that up in the air, as far as we know out here, I would say. Sal will have his own interpretation of the press conference, but rehabbing. So he's not fine. It wasn't something that was, he didn't say like it was a scare or anything like that. He's not fine. And we're at the point on the calendar now where injuries can be secrets. Like a month ago, the Bills would have had, if it's a possible like a 2-week injury or something like that, they might just tell you that. They could be more open about it. But now we're close enough to the opener, 11 days to the Bills opener, 8 to the season opener in the league, Dallas, Philadelphia, cannot wait. That they have reason to play it coy. And maybe that's what they're doing. I think you could have listened to Beane today and thought, that was sort of a good report on White. I really didn't think that exactly because, rehabbing and he's trying, these kinds of things. What really matters the most probably is that he wasn't put on IR, right? So we know that he doesn't have to miss 4 games. So that's good, I guess. Sal coming up at 3:30. If you want to get in on something on your mind, Bills-wise, I'm here for it. We've obviously been in a lot of places over the long off season, but whether it's like this point for me is interesting on how, like when I say I can only go so far, really scrutinizing these kinds of decisions, cut decisions or additions like Poyer today. I don't think I can really build an argument that it's going to be that important to what happens. I know that that's kind of sacrilege in football because everything is described as important, but it's got to be relative. So I can't I don't want to either bring myself to a point where I feel like what is happening there is going to really hurt them. But, it could. And if it does, then what? Like if they cannot be trusted, if the Bills secondary as the season gets going cannot be trusted, and Baltimore carves them up, then you go into week 2, and that's the Jets. And if the Jets, who are not expected to be good offensively, kind of are, we will be asking those questions. Will the Bills lose these games? I mean, they go Jets, Dolphins, Saints, Patriots at home, Atlanta, Carolina after the Ravens. If Cole Bishop is mid and Trey White is even, back healthy but not at his all-pro form, which I think is to be expected, what's my record, I guess you can say, and this is right, that the point of this regular season is about finishing first in the conference. That is what the Bills have yet to accomplish. That is what might be the thing that gets them to the Super Bowl. One fewer game in the playoffs, home field. That, of course, is the easiest path. Kansas City got away with a very challenging season by getting to that one anyway. All those close wins, it drove us crazy. But that afforded them the bye, and then the Texans, and then, they had to win the one game over the Bills, which they again did. So huge advantage. Fantasy football, so it's coming up on Labor Day weekend. You might have drafts in and around tonight. This weekend I've got, shocking, I've got one tonight. And it's a way of, fantasy is a way to frame, you don't need fantasy for this, but it's a way to frame the big question again this year about the Bills offense, which is who, after Allen, of course, excluding Allen, like who is the man if there's going to be one on their offense? And I thought I would share some of my observations and some of the data I've got on how fantasy players are answering that question about the Bills offense. I went on with Pete Overzet this morning on his Best Ball stream, and I'm always, when I do that, identified as like being tight with the Bills. Like I'm not as tight as Pete might think, but just sort of that's the team we talk about every day. So people in the chat are like, what's going to happen? And I had this last year too, and I made fun of myself for it because every time I would go on a fantasy stream, they would ask me this. And I was just absolutely punching blind. The obvious, you have Coleman as a rookie, you have Kincaid in year 2, you have Shakir, who's pretty good, but how high is the ceiling? I don't know, Mac Hollins, we had Chase Claypool last year, we had MVS last year, and as I'm filling that out, the hosts are like, cut his mic. This is ridiculous. How is Marquez Valdez-Scantling going to be the ticket from the Bills receiving corps to a fantasy championship? And of course he was not. He might have had 2 catches or something and he was released. Obviously we know that wasn't the case, but nobody really was. There turned out to be no right answer. Shakir was fine. Shakir was a wide receiver 3 or 4 even on a good fantasy team. that may or may not have even started for you. He wasn't somebody that you like a guy like that in fantasy. You like a guy that gives you sort of the higher floor. He was safe, but you don't really get touchdowns. You didn't. Maybe that changes. You didn't really get touchdowns or like really big weeks from Khalil Shakir. What's the most logical, predictable outcome for him this year, assuming he's healthy, which I kind of am by week 1, is the same kind of year where, does he explode for touch? I just don't see much higher upside. He can't. Touchdowns are random. He could end up breaking a couple more tackles or being a target on a play from like the 12-yard line or something, and then you see that number. What did he even have? Maybe 4? Was it even 4? Like, see a number like that double. That can happen without any real change in philosophy. So if that happens, that's good for you if you have him in fantasy. But his draft position is 83.6 on Underdog. So that is the end of the 7th round. Now, in home leagues, if you're drafting with your friends, that probably will be higher, as in earlier, especially if it's Bills fans. Shakir, we like him. Interesting that Keon Coleman, again, using all these are Underdog best ball rankings from a long offseason of drafts. Everything is, up to date. Coleman is pick 88, which is only 4.4 technically, picks later than Shakir. Shakir is wide receiver 45 in the league in drafts, and Coleman is wide receiver 47. And I think they give you, I'll be a little bit fantasy technical here, just quickly. I think they give you an opposite profile for this. If you're looking for stats, and Shakir gives you that safer, like I just described, that safer, what's a regular game for Shakir, like 5 for 70 or something like that. That kind of a 12 PPR points a week. Whereas Coleman will have, maybe a little bit stereotypical here, but Coleman should have bigger games and he should have smaller ones. I wonder just how bent they're going to be on getting Coleman to a place where like everybody is, nobody wants to question the pick anymore. They should want that for their offense anyway, but, selfishly, the Bills would want that for themselves. Especially the GM, for whatever part he has in how this plays out. He would want that for himself and with Kincaid. So Coleman is the guy that gives you, I think, the spike weeks, whereas Shakir probably doesn't, but they go at around the same time in drafts. Josh Allen is pick 28, so that's pick 4 in the 3rd round, and that's fine. That's really, and Lamar Jackson is right next to him. Jaden Daniels is close too. That's really a question of how you want to build your team, but you wouldn't want to pick Allen any earlier than the mid-2nd round because that's a little nuts. Early 3rd, though, it's fine. Cook is the most interesting one to talk about, and we've done a lot of that with our many guests over the course of the summer. 39.8 for Cook, which is early 4th. And that is kind of the fantasy community sort of yawning at the season he just had. Yeah, lucky. Because, come on. 16 rushing touchdowns for a guy that doesn't even play half the snaps. You'd want to know that he's going to play a lot more, and that's what we don't know yet. And I'm not really expecting that. I don't think the contract dictates that. I wouldn't assume anything when it comes to that. But if you got pretty close even, if you got 1,000 yards again from Cook and half the touchdowns, assuming a full season played, early 4th round in fantasy is fine. That's not going to hurt you. You might even take that. You want to get a little bit more than you get out of Cook as a receiver than what's been happening. And I don't know what to expect there. Like, he hasn't been that great at it. And the offense was so successful anyway last year. I just kind of lean toward they're not going to be anything significantly different, like philosophically. Cook had 32 catches in 16 games for 258 yards. So, I mean, 2 for 16 is the average per week. Shakir would be 5 for 54, by the way. I was guessing at him was a little generous when it came to Shakir. So Cook early fourth. We did Shakir. We did Coleman. Then you have 3 more Bills guys I'll include here that go almost exactly at the same time in drafts, but 3 different positions. Kincaid, Palmer, and Ray Davis. And that's just, what do you need? Kincaid is pick 131. So round 13, is that? End of the 12th, end of the 10th. No, a little higher. End of the 10th would be 120. 11th round, late 11th round. And then early 12th for Palmer at 136. And just after Palmer is Davis at 138. Curious to know what the fan attitude is about Ray Davis this year. We spent so much time on Cook because of the contract stuff. And also because he had like a historic season for them, just what will happen next. He got his money and everything seems fine now. Will he play more like I just brought up? That remains to be seen. I'm not assuming he will. But, Davis is somebody who, when he was needed on a team that, because of, as proven by what Cook did, and with Allen and his prowess as a runner, is just almost like as much as good as you can hope for if you are a running back. The line was good and nobody ever got hurt. You had consistently doable, games where the running backs could get off last year. And in the one game that Cook missed, Davis did that. I mean, that was a game against the Jets. He had one big play that might have been on a reception, but still, he was well over 100 total yards in that game. I think, like I said a lot last year about Cook, I think Cook is fine. I think Davis is fine too as a backup. Selfishly, just for curiosity's sake, as a talk show host, as a fantasy player, I was hoping the Bills would draft one of the sexier prospects even on day 3 at that position. That did not happen. They didn't touch it. And so they go into the season with the same 3 guys, Cook, Davis, and Ty Johnson. I didn't look up Ty Johnson. But we're just starting, really. We should be able to do that if you want. So just for some perspective on, it's only fantasy football, I'll say it that way, but just like where does the market see our guys? And, Shakir and Coleman are back-end wide receiver 4s, going by 12s for 12-team fantasy leagues, guys that would be 4th or 5th receivers on normal teams. And then Kincaid just outside of the top 12 is tight end 13. Palmer at wide receiver 60. Last of the wide receiver 5s then is Palmer. One of our semi-regular guests, Mike Dempsey, was on maybe a month ago and said that Palmer was his most drafted player, which I thought was wild because I just do not see the volume there. You want, I mean, he's cheaper than Coleman. You want from Palmer, in that case, what we kind of want to almost expect from Coleman, like what I was laying out before, which is, the occasional big game, but probably not. I would say this about Palmer, if not also Coleman, probably not someone you can trust in your lineup every week if you're managing your teams. So there you go. Sal's coming up. Brandon Bean spoke today. The Bills are practicing now. We'll get Sal's thoughts on the practice squad put together, the Poyer return, Trey White, and more. As I mentioned, Steve Palazzolo will be on at 4. That's exciting. Longtime PFF analyst. Check the mic with Sam Monson. I think Steve is probably somebody that I can ask about Poyer or Cole Bishop for some sort of analysis. It's not a fantasy show. Steve's really, it's probably my favorite football podcast that is not a fantasy podcast is Steve and Sam. So that'll be at 4. Brian Koziol, as I mentioned as well, talk about the Ryder Cup selections a little bit in the 5 o'clock hour. Thanks for joining me. Sal Capaccio next. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
550 is the number. Let's squeeze Luke in here in this first segment. Hi, Luke. Thanks for calling. You're on WGR.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. Just wanted to kind of get your opinion on Ryan Reeves. He's on waivers. Maybe we bring him in. He's 2 hours away. Sell some tickets. Elevate the team a little bit. What do you think?
I think that's one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. Thank you for calling.
Pizza oven lasts worth more to me than a pizza oven we never use. Maybe almost literally anything in the store is worth more to me than the pizza oven, more than Knox, and I can't have that. We'll see about this pizza oven. I like the idea. Is Dawson Knox the Bills' pizza oven? I don't know. You could search the pizza oven. Enjoy these. Find it. Just go to my look. This won't be hard. Just search it. Just like, hello, phone. Where is Mighty Ducks Game Changers? Like Disney Plus. Great. Look how easy that was. Go to Disney Plus. Not there. Only the trailer.
Oh boy.
I don't know.
Yeah.
All the other Mighty Ducks things are there. The show has never sounded older.
Yeah,
The show has
I know.
The best. Now I'm going to get defensive. Just point out that my daughter is 13. All right. I mean, I can't be that old if I'm not Larry King. Now the show really sounds old. Who's that? Seattle. Has the show ever sounded older? Seattle in the NBA Finals.
F-.
I like this point. F- to me seems like just, like a cartoon.
Right.
Not a real.
Yeah,
F is the lowest.
Yeah, it was like Bugs Bunny, the teacher. Like, what are we doing here?
F-.
The show ever sounded older.
The Bengals food.
See, kids, Bugs Bunny was a cartoon character. I did see the Scouts play in Buffalo. Yeah, I saw a Kansas City Scouts game. As the show ever sounded old.
Well, I'm going to be mad about this, but I'm not going to sacrifice my jersey number for it. Matthew Golden, that's taking it pretty seriously. So I went through thinking about numbers.
I think I like 22 on a wide receiver.
Bob Hayes.
Yeah, works.
Hey, can you think of another one?
No. That's why I like it. Has
the show ever sounded older?
To me, 22 doesn't strike me. Well, I mean, certainly Bob Hayes. It does not strike me as a slow number. It's one of the. He was like an Olympic 100-yard dash champion.
That was his brand.
Has the show ever sounded older?
Welcome back. I shouldn't ever do this, spring something on our guests, but Sal likes his trivia. Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline. I'm enjoying Sal reading through the weekly NBC press release that we get, the Sunday Night Football. Yeah. It's the 20th year of the Sunday Night Football package on NBC. Mm-hmm. And might you have a guess for where the Bills rank all time on this particular, I'll say again, package since 2006 with Michaels and Madden, the Sunday nights. They're not all on Sunday nights, but those NBC broadcasts. Where might the Bills rank in the league since 2006 on that show in winning percentage?
Winning percentage, not number of appearances. Okay. They ran a Sunday night flex game against New England. They lost. That was the first one they've been on in a long time. And then they've had a lot of success after that. There was a Pittsburgh game. There's the LA Rams game out there. Just a lot of success. Man, I think the Bills would be top 5 because I think they only have like one maybe loss I can think of. So I'm going to say 3rd.
Number 1.
All right.
9-3.
I was afraid to say one. But I think they only have. I think I can only remember one loss, and that was the New England game.
The game in Cincinnati. 2 years ago, and then the Ravens last year.
Okay. Oh yeah, Sunday Night Ravens. Yeah, that's right. Jeez, I can remember the old ones, but not the new ones, I guess.
9-3 is the best record by winning percentage in the NFL on NBC Sunday Night Football. It would include the Rams game on the Thursday, and I think maybe the Chargers Peacock game would be included there. I'm not. There's one more that's not on a Sunday that I'd have to look up. Also, just quickly on this, I'm seeing the all-time record for viewers for one of these games was a Dallas-Washington game in 2012. Might have been Week 17, like for the division or something like that. 30.3 million. Last year's season opener, Baltimore, Kansas City, was second. And last year's season finale, Minnesota, Detroit, that Week 18 game for the NFC North, was third. I'm not a student on these numbers, and it's too smaller market, Sal, but I might give Ravens-Bills a shot at breaking that record.
Ooh, that's going to be a really well-watched game. You have obviously the last two MVPs of the league, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, who are both very, very popular and I guess polarizing in a lot of ways for both of them. And it's obviously a rematch of last year's AFC divisional game, and it's also a game that's going to go a long way, or should at least, in the AFC. So I agree with you right there. And then it's, of course, Week 1, and people are juiced up for football.
That's right. And we know it's coming. It's a week and a half. One sign today, Sal, was Brandon Beane, when talking about Trey White and his status for the opener, was being, not completely forthcoming, probably. I don't want to say he was hiding anything exactly. I don't mean that. But just, we're hoping that he'll be ready. We don't know yet. Rehabbing toward the opener. We're at that point on the calendar where we're going to start to have to just wonder what guys' status is for upcoming games.
He even went so far as to mention that next Wednesday, knowing that offhand, is the first day they kind of have to reveal something.
Yeah.
Right? Which is the first day of the injury report coming out. And honestly, it is true. So starting now, they don't have to reveal anything as far as injuries are concerned. They didn't really have to through training camp, but there was always a courtesy what happened. But now we're in the regular season, and the only time they have to is once next week's injury report starts, which is next Wednesday. We'll get a limited or did not participate or full participate with an injury designation, and that's when we will know about Tre'Davious White. So, yeah, they're keeping things very close to the vest. And, yeah, I mean, I think some of that has to be a little bit of gamesmanship, which is you do not want your opponent to know what the situation is, what the status is, and some of it is just because they don't like to talk about injuries. And, that's something that they always kind of keep a little bit closer, like I said. So I think everything is kind of happening all at once with that.
Trey White, by the way, even was on the Ravens last year in the playoffs. Yeah. So they're familiar with him. We'll see what it is. Did you have any particular instinct from Beane today? We know White wasn't put on IR, so they're not expecting him to miss a long time. That's, I think, obvious. But He's not fine either, Sal. Like he said, he's rehabbing, so it's not like this is nothing.
Well, a few things. He said he didn't put him on IR. We know that, so we know he's not out. We know they're giving a chance within the first 4 weeks. I think that would at least say that. He even said it's not a season-ending injury. He's rehabbing. He said Wednesday we'll see next week if he can practice or not. But he was asked specifically, so you're not ruling him out week 1? He said, I am not ruling him out week 1. He specifically said, I am not ruling him out week 1.
Why do that, right? I mean, no, unless you know it's bad. If it's bad enough, they only have the 2 spots I want to recognize, and maybe they could have a player that they think could miss significant time, but wouldn't have a way to. I think what you do. Sorry to get in the weeds, but what you do with Grable, the lineman, is you just put him on IR or waived or something like that, and White would take precedence. I think so. Doubt it's anything long term, but. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound like he's going to be 100%.
It sounds like that, but we'll see. I'm out at practice right now, and because the team is still on the field right now, I can't give an update on anything as far as player participation, but if people pay attention to my X feed at Sal Sports after practice, I'll have that as far as who's here, who's not, who's working, who's in a red jersey, things like that. There's certain rules we have to follow when we can actually release that. But that'll be when we leave the practice field at some point here in the next, probably within this phone call, to be quite honest with you, because they started out here at 3, and we only get to watch a certain portion now. It is the regular season rules. We do not get to watch the entire practice.
Sal, the roster cuts were yesterday. Today was for waiver claims around the league. The Bills apparently made none. And also, none of their players that they cut was claimed by another team. Is that interesting?
It is interesting. I mean, from a standpoint of, you're always wondering, like, are they going to grab somebody? Or is somebody grabbing somebody from their team? And first of all, we don't know if they put any waiver claims in. Let's remember the Bills have the 30th pick in the waiver claim order. So even if there was a player they wanted, 29 other teams get a shot at that player every single time. It does not reset. You don't jump to the front of the line after the first pick or the second pick. It's literally Tennessee gets first pick, they go again. They get first pick again. They grab like 5 guys, right? 4 guys, 5 guys, something like that. So you get down to 30, even if the Bills put in a waiver claim, it wouldn't matter. They would probably not get the guy. That being said, I always want to remind everybody, and I know that like it's a cool thing, and I love it. I love it too. I love watching it and seeing the movement and who's going where and did anybody claim anybody. But the God's honest truth, Mike, is teams like their guys more than they like other guys generally. They draft a guy, they develop a guy, they have a guy in their program. He's been there with their coaches, with their teammates, with their training staff for, the last whatever months. And when it comes time to release them, you'd rather have that guy come back to you than go out there and get another guy that you don't know as much about. You have to onboard him into your system, into your team meetings. And even if you like the guy's talent more, that's a huge consideration why they wouldn't choose that guy over the guy they already had on their team.
Yeah, that's all reasonable. And plus, not only do the worst teams by last year's record get as many picks as they want, like you mentioned in terms of Tennessee, but they also need the most help. So,
that's right.
How might a GM do it? You sort of have a list of a number of guys on your roster that you might think that are replaceable. Everything you just said being said, then okay, but still, you might have somebody that you liked in the draft process a lot and have been hoping maybe would come free. That's the move you make. But thank you for pointing out that the Bills, we don't know that they didn't claim anybody. They just were not successful.
Correct. And I do want to make a point. Brandon Beane was asked today, a really good question by Thad Brown. And Thad asked him, okay, so when you get down to, you have 70 guys on the roster when you count all the practice squad guys. You've got 53, then you got 17 with an international guy. When you're talking about players 68, 69, and 70, how do you parse, hey, we got a young guy that we've drafted. It's going to take some time. We like him. We like having him here versus, we got an older guy. We got a veteran. He might not even help us this year, but, man, we like having him in the building. He can really help mentor. He can kind of sit in meetings, and guys can really lean on him and learn from him. That's Jordan Poyer now. That's Jordan Phillips. And I really liked Brandon answering that and saying that's absolutely a part of the discussion. Like, you have to think about that. You can say to yourself, I really like this young guy we drafted. We want to keep him here. But he's a project, and it's going to take a little while. Or you can say, you know what? It's better for our team to have an older guy here who might not even play that much for us, but, man, we love having him here. And that's 68, 69, 70. Those guys, the bottom end of the roster, are the guys at the bottom end of the roster. Most of them are not going to see the field this year.
Let's talk about Poyer, Sal. Was this one out of left field?
Totally. I have to admit, Mike, people had asked me a couple times about him, and I basically dismissed it any single time it happened. I basically would say, I just did not see it happening. I didn't see it coming, so we kind of dismissed it any time it was brought up to me. But, yeah, as soon as it percolated and we heard that Jordan Poyer was signed, I was pretty surprised. And, Brandon Beane talked about it today and said, why that was and what he brought to the table. And I was surprised to learn they've been talking since May, him and Jordan Poyer and Jordan Phillips, actually, both the Jordans. I will tell you, I completely was stunned. And anytime someone brought it up to me, I basically dismissed it, and I was wrong.
What do you think of the merits here? I mean, I think that there are obvious reasons that you could use to show how you understand the decision. It's the practice squad, his experience with the Bills, leadership, all that kind of maybe obvious stuff. He did. I mean, how did it end for him here, Sal? Like the Bills, for all the success they had together, he got to a point where they just were not interested anymore, and he went to Miami for very little money. So is it possible to think that the Bills have sort of a vision here where that like Poyer has something meaningful left to give on the field, or is it really mostly just the background stuff that teams, appreciate from veteran players?
I think it's mostly the background stuff. I'm not going to sit here and tell you there's no, thought that he could ever play for the team. And, when Micah Hyde came back last year, it was pretty much, I'm not playing, right? Like, I think everybody kind of knew Micah wasn't going to play. That was just kind of either spoken or unspoken, didn't matter. We all kind of realized that. He came back later in the year. In this case, Jordan's here now, so maybe that does happen, but it's really what he brings to help out in that safety room. And when people hear, and I know I get it a lot, and I understand, well, isn't that what coaches are for? Why do you need a coach on the field? Why do you need an older player? And Brandon Beane spoke about it today. It's not just on the field. It's how you conduct yourselves in meetings, watching film, understanding something. You see something that maybe another person wouldn't because you're a veteran. You've been in this league. You're watching film and saying, hey, you know what? We played this team once. They did this. You can help that guy prepare a little bit. So, yeah, that's the stuff that they like from him. How did it end? Not great. He lost a step when he was here a couple of years ago, and I thought he lost even more last year playing for the Miami Dolphins. That was pretty evident watching him on the field. And that's a big reason why I was stunned. I just didn't think it was something they would do, but I get it from all the background stuff we just talked about. But as a player, it didn't end great. They went through a bit of a contract thing one year. They gave him a 2-year deal, and then they wound up basically, reducing that and, getting rid of him, or I should say, releasing him after 1 year.
And this is really just a teeing one up for you, Sal, but I'm assuming you and maybe everybody would corroborate the idea of Poyer's value, in the locker room and the experience and all that. It's not something we ever did deep dives on, just like sort of how these guys lead and what they're like in the room or anything like that. But I feel like it's probably a given, and now they've made the move to even say this further, but it's probably a given that Poyer was, excellent in that role.
Yeah, listen, I would say it this way, Mike. I don't know because I'm not in the room, obviously. But I think that the Buffalo Bills would never bring a player in like Jordan Poyer or Jordan Phillips if they didn't feel he was excellent in that regard. Like, I think they're so cognizant of that, how much they have to be a part of the culture and the organization and the locker room and everything that goes along with it. I would never expect Brandon Beane or Sean McDermott to sign a player that they didn't have full confidence in that guy does everything we ask and does everything right. It is so important to them. You know that about their locker room and what it means to them. And we've heard them talk about that. So that's why whenever people will talk about those guys and coming in and what they bring, to me, it's not a question because I know they wouldn't bring him here if they had a question. Right.
Do you happen to know, by the way, if the salaries on the practice squad are figured out by experience? I know the range is from about 250, whoever it is that's at Spot Track, I forget now, the number one highest paid player on the practice squad was just under 400. Would Poyer be somebody that would make more than that because of the career he's had, or is there a certain structure that has to be followed?
So, I don't know the exact number, but I believe that is the case because you are only allowed a certain amount of veterans on the practice squad, and those veterans will make a little bit more by being on the practice squad than a rookie or a first-year player because there are certain rules about how many guys who have a certain number of years experience you can even have. So I do believe, I just don't know the numbers, that the more years you have, obviously you would get paid a little bit more.
Okay. Did you have your draft last night?
Tonight is my first fantasy draft of the year.
Since February 5th.
Everybody's wondering. I'm going to say draft. There's 12 teams. I actually won the toilet bowl last year, as we call it, because I didn't make the playoffs and I won that bracket. And in our league, we reward that winner with their draft selection the following year. So a couple weeks ago, or maybe a month ago, I asked you, what would you choose? And we went through it, and I ultimately chose 8th. And lots of people in my league are wondering, why the heck would you choose 8th? That doesn't seem right. And I like it, though, because I went through it with you, and we talked about it. We texted each other. And there's a certain group of guys that I know I'm going to get 2 of in that spot, and I like that.
And this is a keeper league, right? So not everybody's available?
No, it is a keeper league with one guy, and usually it's not guys take it high, except in this year's draft, I do think Brian Thomas Jr. is being kept. That's one that's off the board. There might be another one I can't think of right now because the way we do it is you get to keep one guy that you drafted in the 8th round or later the year before, which is a pretty cool thing. That kind of rewards you for taking a flyer on somebody who works out.
Hoping that these players happen to both be available for you, would you rather have Shakir or Coleman?
Coleman.
Easily?
I think that Coleman, to me, is going to have a jump. Even if he doesn't approach Shakir's targets and catches, I think that the touchdowns would outweigh that. I think he's a bigger play guy that would overvault him, and I just think the ceiling could be higher. I would rather take – I'm usually a guy that goes the other way, to be honest with you, Mike. I'm usually a guy that takes more of the safe, like, floor and say, I'm good with this guy. But I think Coleman's situation, I'd regret passing on him if he had a big year, and he could.
Yeah, you're playing for upside, and I respect that.
Yeah.
That's what you want to do. I wish there were another close one for the Bills. Like Palmer, I laid this out earlier based on their average draft position. Like Shakir is about 84 on Underdog. Coleman is 88, so they work together for the question. Palmer is 136. He's actually close to Kincaid, Palmer, but, different position. Still, like, could you talk yourself into Palmer? I think I could.
Sure, I could talk myself into it. I will tell you, though, Keon Coleman is kept in our league because it is a Florida league, but there's a guy in our league who's a big Bills fan, and he took Keon Coleman as his keeper for this year, and so he's going to be rewarded with that. We'll see where it goes. So he's actually off the board in our league.
I mean, that's probably not great for his roster.
Maybe not, but it doesn't count as anything. It doesn't count as like a certain pick. You just get him.
No, right. Just, a fan.
It's a freebie. I get Caleb Williams. I took Caleb Williams last year in like a 9th or 10th round and stashed him all year, and we'll see where it goes now.
You have him still?
Yeah, that's my keeper this year.
Is he going to start for you, you think?
It's a good question, Mike. I was going through that. If there is a high-level quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round that I can't pass on, I'll take him. But otherwise, I think I'll roll with him.
All right. Good luck. Can't wait to hear about it. I really mean that.
I appreciate that. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks, Sal. Sal Capaccio on the West Her hotline. Caleb Williams is fringe. So, think of Sal as Brandon Beane, or the friend of his in Florida as Brandon Beane with Coleman. I like using Sal here. So he kept Caleb Williams. I mean, don't you have to play him? See, if your fantasy team was under scrutiny, we had, silly talk shows like this one who would analyze your decisions. Well, how can you keep Caleb Williams and not start him? Like, what kind of roster management is that? But, Sal gave the right answer, a business answer. If I can get somebody better, I'll do it. I don't have. This is what, Beane would say. Something like that. Always try to make our team better. But we like the player. That's why we kept him. That's why we did all this. That works. Here's Eric with us. Hi, Eric.
Oh, hey, Mike. How's it going today?
Okay, good.
I just want to kind of roll through it quick. And, yeah, I just want to talk about the 53-man roster. And I don't know. I just kind of wanted to say that looking over it, it doesn't look really any more talented than a lot of the drought team rosters that we've had over the years. Obviously, Josh Allen is amazing and incredible and, lifts all boats, right? I kind of wanted to just say that I feel like their focus towards defense and running the ball seems like an attitude of a team that expects more to be like an underdog by 9 points every week. I feel like they should build towards putting the best offenses of all time to shame. Like, they should look at Josh Allen's Bills and then Kurt Warner's Greatest Show on Turf. So I don't know. I just wonder what it's going to take for them to kind of look at building it the other way, if it's, 4 or 5 more, losses in rounds or different staff or whatever it is. I just kind of want to know what you thought about it, and I'll hang up and listen. Thanks.
Okay, yeah. I mean, I'm always crushing on that kind of thought too, but what you have to ask yourself, first is winning 11 to 13 games and at least one playoff game every year successful enough to justify thinking that your philosophy is pretty okay? Or does it need to become more about losing those playoff games that you've lost as proof that it's not? And then after you tackle that brain buster, then it's, well, what can I really do about it? I think I think you did literally ask this. If you're asking what would have to happen for them to change, and they've shifted. I mean, they've become this running team that they were last year, but they didn't start this 5-year run of dominance in the division that way. I mean, quite not. But that's what they've sort of shifted into. So they haven't been stoic. But would it, like you said, would they need to lose 4 or 5 more playoff games before leaning into a more, well, the greatest show on turf kind of team? I don't know. I think it's more option A, which is the success that they've had justifies their philosophies about this. And I've had it stuffed in my face here like last year with them, and we all have, that those of us that obsess about their receiver quality is like, well, just like Brandon Beane called in to say that one Monday morning, how did we do? And you can clap back with you lost in the end. You lost in a game where you scored 29 points and against Spagnuolo's Chiefs on the road. I think that's a tough one. So I wanted to be a little easier to make the wide receiver, case, but it's not as easy as I would want it to be, just for argument's sake, because they've been as successful as they've been. That's their defense, and it's a very good one. Thanks for the call, Eric. Steve Palazzolo next. I'm Mike Schopp. This is WGR.
Yesterday for the Bills, we got their initial 53-man roster, and today we got the 16-person practice squad. For more on that, we do have a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. The Bills also got back to practice today, and for those who did not participate, no Christian Benford, Tre'Davious White, Curtis Samuel, Cedric Van Pran Granger, Tylen Grable, or Bills rookie safety Jordan Hancock. Hancock, though, did get back to practice to some extent. He had a red non-contact jersey, while Khalil Shakir, he was back to practice, and Jordan Poyer, along with Jordan Phillips, were both back to practice as they signed with the practice squad earlier today. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been suspended the first 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Bills do play the Chiefs in Week 9. For the Ravens, who the Bills will play in Week 1, they lock up safety Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year extension worth $100.4 million. $82 million of that contract is guaranteed. And the Vikings, they bring in a familiar face. They acquire wide receiver Adam Thielen, a conditional 7th in this year's draft, and a 5th in 27. In exchange, they send Carolina a 26th 5th-rounder and a 27th 4th-rounder. The U.S. Ryder Cup captain picks are in. Keegan Bradley does not select himself. Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Patrick Cantlay, Sam Burns, Cameron Young round out the roster. Brian Koziel will join the show at 5:30 to talk more on the Ryder Cup, which get underway later in September. And then some early afternoon baseball. The Yankees up 11-1 on the Nationals in the 9th, and then coming up at 6:30. The Bisons on the road in Indianapolis. That game can be heard on our sister station, the Bet 1520. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp.
You might be mocking me or you might be staunchly agreeing with me. I can't tell.
I'm mocking you.
And the Bulldog.
What is Fozzie Bear's role in this production?
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
One other transaction around the league today is that the Patriots claimed Tommy DeVito, former Giants quarterback. This gives us what we need, which is more of a chance to comment on Tommy DeVito in the world and his agent. Do we want that? I guess it's not bad. The agent's a character. Will he ever see the field? Who knows? I'm a big fan of our next guest. Joining me now on the West Shore Hotline, Steve Palazzolo. Check the Mic with Sam Monson. My favorite podcast about football that is not about fantasy, that is not centered on fantasy, is Check the Mic. And Steve, I don't know if this is weird or not, but like sometimes you think about a player or whatever. It doesn't even have to be sports, but you just remember the first time you heard his name. And for me, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt was on your show with Sam when, before the draft, you guys each ranked your top 10 running backs. And Sam included Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who I had never heard of, and you loved it. You're like, oh, you did it. You put him on your list. And look at life now, Steve. I mean, he went from not drafted in fantasy to like round 7.
I love it. I love that we could bring some depth to the fans and the listeners on Check the Mic. And he's a shifty running back that fits what Washington wants to do, and he's the hottest name this preseason among late round rookies.
Do you see him? And we'll get to the Bills, of course, and other topics. But do you see him being like relevant right away, or is he still going to have to work his way in? Eckler is there, even Chris Rodriguez.
I think they have roles for all three of those guys. Different skill sets. Eckler is a veteran, good pass catcher. Chris Rodriguez, more of a bruiser. I love what he does as far as forcing missed tackles. And then Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or Bill Krosky-Merritt, just what he's able to do in space. And it's still a spread-centric offense. Jaden Daniels is a run threat. They create opportunities for running backs to get into space because of all the misdirection and the fact that defenses have to account for Jaden Daniels. So, yeah, I think Krosky-Merritt has a path to the field, using him on more space-type plays, and he does a good job creating on his own, which is, I think, a part of the reason why they ended up moving on from Brian Robinson. So I think there's a world where all three are sharing carries and sharing situational football there in Washington.
Well, great. I'm vested. And again, it traces to you guys because you do these rookie drafts and you get to the 4th round and, who knows? What are the odds for anybody to hit? But I drafted this guy a lot, just thinking and there were plenty of guys like this, right, in this draft. There's talent here. Bashal Tootin, Krosky Merritt, several others. There's talent here if they get the right opportunity.
No, there absolutely is, and especially with running back, right? That whole debate about do you take an Ashton Genty or an Marion Hampton in the first round, or can you get value later in the draft? It's not easy necessarily to get day 3 running backs to come in and have success, but it may be easier than other positions, and you're seeing some of that around the league.
Right. I was hoping, and I might be just selfishly hoping because it's fantasy for me, and James Cook was leaving us to wonder about his future, that the Bills would have dabbled at that position this year. They've consistently drafted running backs, like kind of perennially, never in the first round. But they didn't think they needed to. They go into the season with the same 3, Cook, Ray Davis, and Ty Johnson. If you had a feeling that goes back before the draft or just now, Steve, do you think they're thin there? Do you think they're fine or what?
I think they're in good shape, especially, if they had confidence that they were going to get Cook and that there wasn't going to be an issue, I'm good with that 3. And again, I'm a big fan of different skill sets and being able to use guys in different ways schematically. And they have that. Cook, of course, more of the workhorse and has the speed element. Ray Davis, who's just, so difficult to tackle. And then Ty Johnson, the number of times that Ty Johnson is open down the field in the pass game was just unbelievable last year. So using him in the pass game the way they did, I like where they are. And then you throw in, a Reggie Gilliam just to mix things up as a fullback tight end hybrid. I think they're good in the backfield there and like how the Bills are set up.
The Johnson point, some separation ability there, especially for a running back, and then some scheme. The Bills receivers, Steve, have a reputation for not being able to separate. Does Johnson deserve a lot of the credit for what he was able to do, or is it more just, scheme or whatever else?
It's a little bit of that. I think Brady does a good job scheming things open and giving them those wheel routes and vertical routes. And again, I think offense in today's NFL is about having multiple options and really stressing the defense. And while the Bills, I know there's plenty of debates about do they have a great X receiver, or do they have the one guy that you need to keep an eye on like they had maybe with Stephon Diggs. What the Bills do really well is have a whole bunch of difficult to cover players, whether it's their tight ends who are hybrid slot receivers, whether it's Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman and his size, add Josh Palmer to the mix this year. And that just frees up the running backs when you have to account for that many weapons in the pass game. So using Ty Johnson on the vertical routes, I think a lot of it was scheme and just being a part of this deep group of pass catchers. And then part of it is just a skill set that the Bills have been able to tap into.
And, of course, plus having to worry about Allen taking off and then running over you. That's a pretty...
Every single play, whether it's Allen as a design runner, as a scrambler, or as a passer, right? So this is all of the different ways that you can keep defenses off balance. And I think the Bills have done a really nice job leveraging all those different options, especially with Joe Brady as the play caller these last couple of years.
Do you happen to think that whether the Bills should do more or less running with Allen? I mean, I think there's an argument for either. Maybe they've hit the sweet spot. He's 29 now. Eventually there'll be a day where I think you probably have to rein it in, but I don't know that we're there yet. How would you, if at all, want to see them change how they use him?
Every year, my analysis is usually I want to see the Bills win without him. Not because they need to, but it's a better indicator of what they are as a team. And then one of those, hey, let's break in case of emergency. And that could be within a game. That could be, it could be a game against the Jets or the Patriots, but it's, 3rd and 4 and you need it and you give it to Josh Allen. And then in the Chiefs games and Ravens games and in the playoffs, you use him a little bit more. And I think that's probably the best balance. I also think the Bills are in this world where we grew up in New England, so I watched the Red Sox-Yankees documentary, the Red Sox documentary from 2004, and how they were for years trying to get over the hump and win a World Series, of course, and trying to beat the Yankees. And they figured out how to do it in the postseason, right? They got past, over that hump. And I'm wondering if the Bills or the Ravens, too, have to figure that out, right? How do you beat the Chiefs? What do you do differently? And so there's definitely elements of this where I wonder how much the Bills can save for the playoffs. Not saying you're going to sleepwalk through the regular season or that it's easy or that you don't want the number 1 seed. But at the end of the day, you have to beat Kansas City, and you're going to have to beat Baltimore again, and you're going to have to beat these best teams. So saving your best for those times, saving your best plays, if there's any way to possibly do that, which is challenging in football, I think the Bills are at that point where they're good enough to get through the AFC East, but have to win those games in the postseason. So save your best for then, and that's when you unlock maybe extra Josh Allen plays or just general best plays generally across the board as far as offense goes.
Mm-hmm. With Steve Palazzolo, I'm Mike Schopp here on WGR. You know what? I love that point, and it's something we've talked about these last few years because the Bills are they're easily a candidate to be talked about that way. We had Belichick and the Patriots for 20 years. Like, do they even – I don't know if you might know what the reality was there, but it was easy to suspect they could slow play the regular season. And maybe the Bills could do that. I just think, Steve, like last year was the year for that. They clinched the division on December 1st. And they were still chasing the 1 seed, and they were right, I would think, obviously, to go for that. But then here comes Kansas City for the 4th time in 5 years, and they could not get the Chiefs off the field. And that, for me, was really demoralizing about the big picture here they again have poured a ton of investment into defense. It's just like one of these years, it needs to be enough.
Yeah. I also don't think they need to overhaul everything. I like that Brandon Beane hasn't said, hey, we're changing everything, right? We're getting rid of – they reset a little bit before last season. They got younger, got rid of some veterans who happened to be back. And I think that was the right move for sustained success. But yeah, at some point it's got to click. So it's not like a complete overhaul from an organization perspective, but it definitely felt like in the draft and in some of their offseason moves, they said we're at this never again territory where we don't want to have a thin defensive line going into the playoffs. We can't have a thin secondary going into the playoffs. Obviously, unfortunate injury to Benford during the playoff game there when it seemed like they wanted to play man coverage. It did seem like they were going to change things up and say, okay, we're challenging Chiefs receivers. Go ahead, try to beat us over the top. You haven't done it all season to anyone. And they just weren't able to really execute the game plan that they wanted going in. So it does seem like they're trying to say, look, the foundation's so strong. It's all about depth now. Love the way they drafted from a depth perspective, different body types up front perspective. But I do wonder how much you can save for the playoffs. It's really just a luck of the draw thing, most likely, the fact that the Bills are able to beat the Chiefs in the regular season and then struggle in the playoffs and, an attrition thing. But any way that you can find a way, they have to try it now.
Yeah. One more thought on that AFC Championship since we're talking about that. The game ends essentially on a Bills 4th down play where they were just, I guess, is it safe to say, just not prepared for what they got on that play. I'm hoping you can see it, thinking back to Chris Jones and the Chiefs blitzing from Allen's right, and then it's sort of a desperation heave. It's off Kincaid's hands, but that's how it ends. How fair is it for you to point to Spagnuolo versus McDermott as a key difference in these games? You make a fair point about Benford. He was great, and that was a big loss. Elam couldn't hold up. But we hear this a lot from fans. It's like, in the end, again, Mahomes has not thrown an interception against the Bills in 4 playoff games. Is there something that they're missing versus what Kansas City is able to do? The Bills got their points in that game, but in the end, the critical moment, it was theirs.
Yeah, I think Spags deserves a ton of credit for everything that the Chiefs have done. On one hand, you can go back and say the Chiefs are a couple plays away from not having all of those Super Bowls, to be honest. They were 1 play away from losing to San Francisco, and Spags has a blitz that gets in Brock Purdy's face and bats down a pass on 3rd down, sets them up to get back into the game. And then the same thing last year. Spags has been doing this for a few years now. So, yeah, they've had the advantage there with Spags, right? So there is this element of, from a game plan perspective, how do you change? I really thought Buffalo was trying. I thought they were saying, we're going to play more man coverage than we ever have against Kansas City, and then just couldn't hang with the injury. But, yeah, those are the interesting turning points that come up. And for whatever reason, it does feel like the Chiefs, I used to say last year they were calibrated to win by 3, whether they were playing the Raiders or playing the Bills, right? They found a way to win by a score and by a tight margin. And normally that's difficult to sustain. And normally that regresses. But they have done a great job in Kansas City Mahomes has a great feel for game management. Spags has a great feel for when to send, when to sit back, when to mix things up in attack protection. And it often comes down to just those handful of plays.
Yeah. And then they'll get the blocked field goal against Denver or whatever else needs to happen. I mean,
the Raiders just dropped the snap. They were in field goal range to beat them on Black Friday, and they just dropped the snap. So there's luck in there for Kansas City too. But again, they always find a way to make fewer mistakes than their opponent more often than not.
Yeah. What is your thought on them this year? Because, like as you've said, this one is a tester. We have these teams that are outliers in close games. The Bills had a stretch a couple of years ago where they lost all the close games. They've almost never in these 5 years lost badly. It's kind of amazing. But, you know, they had a season where 5 or 6 one-score games went the wrong way. Would you expect Kansas City to at least somewhat regress? I feel like I need to say that, not from the Bills standpoint, but just from a math one, that it shouldn't be possible to just continue on that kind of road.
On paper, Kansas City should regress because of the one-score games, because of some of the turnover, right? They lose Joe Thuney, one of the best guards in the NFL. They lose some depth on the defensive side of the ball. But I really liked the way they drafted, and I really like some of the free agents that they sprinkled in. And then when you look at their offense, and I don't mean to overrate preseason games, but the left tackle issue, I mean, the left tackle situation has been a major issue for Kansas City. And if you go back and look at all of Kansas City, all of Mahomes' worst games the last few years, it has coincided with awful left tackle play. And now they've got first-rounder Josh Simmons, who was injured and wasn't even expected to play in training camp and be ready for the start of the season. And he's out there day one of camp, and he looks the part, and he looks ready to step in as their franchise left tackle. And for whatever it's worth against the Bears the other night, they looked unstoppable again. And the Chiefs are going to try to be aggressive, and it looks like they're trying to throw the ball downfield more than ever. So they have the speed, they have the left tackle. Yeah, there's a few more questions, but they look equipped to be formidable again, and maybe not have to win by one score as often as they did last year. Maybe be a little more explosive, because it's been a good, not great offense the last 2 years, despite having Mahomes, despite having Andy Reid. Injuries and the left tackle issue have been problems.
Interesting.
Now, again, depth might catch up a little bit on some of their spots, but I think they can offset that by putting a few more points on the board, a little more explosive than they have been the last couple of years. They'll be dangerous, obviously.
Okay. Thinking of our colleague in Kansas City, Alex Gold, he said something like that. I mean, they haven't made 6 straight Super Bowls, I think. Well, Cincinnati, whatever it is, 4 out of 5 or whatever it is. But I think he said they had a different left tackle in every one of their final games.
Yeah, they have. And in the last 2 years, they've been trying a developmental third-round rookie, developmental second-round rookie. Those did not work. When they shorted up with veteran Donovan Smith a couple of years ago, and they had Orlando Brown before that, and they had Eric Fisher before that, when they have a dependable left tackle play, that offense has been that much better. So on one hand, it's like, hey, is Mahomes just really fragile to the left tackle spot? It's usually – left tackle, to me, is usually overrated. Like, all the offensive line spots matter, but for whatever reason – Kansas City has had a struggle there having consistency, and if they've solved that, that bodes well, I think, for the Chiefs and their offensive future.
Sure. Just a couple minutes left here with Steve Palazzolo. Check the Mic with Sam Monson, a fine podcast that they host, and Sam's been on our show, as listeners will know, many times. He was on every week there back in the PFF days for a couple of seasons. Well, maybe this was inherent to what you were saying before about the Bills, like sort of long game strategy this year. Is there a threat to them in the AFC East? I was talking yesterday, Steve, about how, I listen to a lot of shows, and a lot of them are fantasy shows, but still, everybody seems to like New England right now, and nobody likes Miami. The Jets, you can find people who can talk themselves into Justin Fields, and plenty of people won't be able to do that. What's your feeling on the competition?
I don't think there's a threat for the division. I think the Bills should win it unless something disastrous happens. I look at New England as a wide range of outcomes. Drake May looked good last year in a terrible situation. That terrible situation should be much better, from the play caller, Josh McDaniels, to the offensive line improvements, to the pass catchers. So I think May should have a decent second season. But if he's really good, maybe not Jaden Daniels good, but in that, approaching that spot, then you're talking about maybe a 9 or 10 win team in New England, plus all the additions they had on defense. They had a ton of money to spend, and they added talent there. New England could be dangerous. But if they also won 6 games coming off of 2 4-win seasons, I also wouldn't be all that surprised. I think Miami is another team that has their baseline can be high. I mean, Tua's still good, and Tyreek Hill, while he's on the roster, still could be really good, and Jalen Waddle, like they could put points on the board, but they always hit a ceiling, which was other good teams, even when they had better talent. So they've taken a hit talent-wise, and they were already struggling to beat the best teams in the NFL. So that's why I think people are soured on Miami. And then the Jets, I think they're in the middle of a rebuild. They're kind of talented. I think Fields it's a high floor type of team with Fields. Like they'll be competitive, maybe slow the game down, try to play good defense, run the ball. But yeah, I don't think they're scary as far as the division goes. But if they won 7 or 8 games, playing an ugly brand of football, I also wouldn't be surprised. So I think there's some feistiness in the division, but it's once again, I think the Bills, they're the biggest favorite in sports books, and I think that's the right way of looking at it. The Bills are the heavy favorites in the East.
One thing that I point out a lot about all that is New England's schedule is kind of incredible for how soft it is. Their first 13 games, I mean, if they're competent, they're going to win 8 or 9, I think, based on who they play. They are here in Week 5, and they have a Buffalo-Baltimore back-to-back late, but then it's the Jets and Dolphins again. So if they're any good, I think they're in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I could see that. Like I liked Drake May coming out. I thought he showed a lot of good stuff last year. Again, it's tough to know. Okay, did he really just struggle because the offensive line was awful and he had no one to throw to, or was he just making rookie mistakes? So yeah, if Drake May took a huge step this year, wouldn't be surprised. I think he'll be good. They're relying on some rookies on the offensive line, which is risky. Even though I think they'll be good, sometimes that takes a year or two for the rookies to gel. And then, yeah, defensively, they added some impact talent. Christian Gonzalez at corner, he's hurt right now, but when he's back, a pretty good 1-2 punch with him and Carlton Davis at corner, and some of the pass rush that they've added. Yeah, some depth on that defensive line that they've added. So, yeah, I think New England will be, on paper, they're much improved from a roster perspective over the last 2 years, but they're still young and have to put it all together.
Last thing, Steve, who would be, if you have one, a dark horse in the league? Somebody that would be minus money to make the playoffs, maybe even by quite a bit, that you think will be better than most people?
So I think in the NFC West, that's the one division I wouldn't be surprised if any team won out of the 4. So the Seahawks have the lowest odds to win the division. I picked them to win the division on our pick show.
Okay.
I think Seattle has another wide range of outcomes. If they can get good Sam Darnold again, I think their run game could be much improved with a different scheme that they've implemented, the Shanahan-Kubiak scheme. I think their defense, too, really good depth on the defensive line. Second year with Mike McDonald as head coach, a great 1-2 punch with Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon at corner. So I think Seattle's built a pretty deep roster the last couple of years. A lot will come down to what Darnold can do in his first year there. And the Arizona Cardinals, so it's those 2 NFC West teams. I think Arizona's trending in the right direction. Love all the pass rushes that they've added. I think Jonathan Gannon's done a really nice job competing with a lesser roster the last 2 years, and now he's got at least a mid-tier type of roster, which I think makes the Cardinals a lot more dangerous than they've been the last couple seasons.
Very good. Keep up the good fight against the shouty shows. I like to just totally ignore them, but it is good content, so I'm glad you're out there breaking some of these ridiculous comments down. I appreciate that personally.
I feel like the shouty shows are losing people left and right, and it's all since we started that segment on the mic, so we'll keep pushing it.
We're going to win the war, right, Steve? That's the plan.
That's right. Have to do it.
Enjoy the season. Thanks a lot for today.
All right. Yep. Thank you.
You're welcome. Steve Palazzolo, Check the Mic with Sam Monson. Shouty shows like all your favorites, ESPN, Fox, where like a steady diet of things that said loudly that the person saying them does not really think or believe. I mean, who has any interest in time for that? Well, millions of people apparently, because that's I guess one way you can do it. The big that is not as a rule. I mean, you don't have to be disingenuous to be rich and famous, but the guys at the top of that heap, just what is it like? What is it like to just be knowingly wrong, willfully ignorant all the time and have it work for you? Like, what is that really like? Sports, politics, what does it feel like to go home? Probably pretty good. Somebody's probably cooking for you. Your bed is made. I don't know. It's sad. Next, your calls, if you've got them, 803-0550. We've covered a lot already. AFC East, Jordan Poyer is back. The Bills roster stuff from yesterday. Is anybody worried about the season? Is that a thing that Bills fans are thinking about, feeling at this point? How worried can you be? Mike Schopp here. Brian Koziol will join me in an hour to talk a little bit about the Ryder Cup. This is WGR.
53-man roster and the 16-person practice squad for the Buffalo Bills is finalized for the 2025 season. Of course, this could change as the year goes on, but for right now, it is finalized. For more on that, we do have a piece up at our website, WGR550.com. Bills also got back to practice today, and those that did not practice today, cornerback Christian Benford, cornerback Tre'Davious White, wide receiver Curtis Samuel, offensive lineman Cedric Van Pran-Granger, and offensive lineman Tylen Grable. Bills rookie safety Jordan Hancock was back at practice, though was in a red non-contact jersey. And then Khalil Shakir, he was back to practice. He's been dealing with a high ankle sprain, and Jordan Poyer along with Jordan Phillips were both at practice as they have both signed to the practice squad. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been suspended the first 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Bills do play the Chiefs in Week 9. Their Week 1 opponent, the Ravens, lock in safety Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year extension worth $100.4 million. $82 million of that contract is guaranteed. And then some Ryder Cup news as the captain picks are in. Keegan Bradley does not select himself. Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Patrick Cantlay, Sam Burns, and Cameron Young round out that roster. Brian Koziel will join the show in just about an hour at 5:30 to talk more on the Ryder Cup, which will get underway later on in September. And then some early afternoon baseball does see the Yankees take down Washington 11-2. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Headlines. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
We're rehabbing him, as much as we can. And he's got a great attitude. He's attacking it. And really, other than that, we're just going to take it day by day, I guess, and kind of see where that goes. I'm sure as we get into next week, Wednesday, I think, is the first day that an injury report will be due. So we'll see what it is, whether he can practice any or not, or what that looks like at that time.
Brandon Beane on Trey White. What I hear is it's not great. We'll see if he can practice in a week for purposes of the injury report, rehabbing, going as hard as he can. Almost feels like he's talking about somebody before a playoff game, it's just like, we're hoping, my words, or maybe were also his. It's not nothing, They had, I'll say again, like I mentioned with Sal, you get 2 spots for IR designated to return after 4 games, and only 2. And one went to an offensive lineman named Tylen Grable. I think if they were really concerned about Trey White, like missing a month or more, I feel like if you do that, you think a month he's going to miss at least 4 weeks. That's what they did with Max Hairston. Then White would be on that list, and Tylen Grable would be on some other list, waived or permanent, IR, something else. You'd want to use that spot for your most important guys. They didn't think it was necessary to put Trey White there, so that's good. But it's not nothing. I mean, if he's talking the way he was talking today, it sounds like it's really maybe iffy for the first game at least. What do you think? 803-0550 is the number. Let's go to Zach here. Hi, Zach.
Hey, Mike. I wouldn't say I'm worried about the season upcoming here, but for the sake of conversation, if I had a few things here, I think their reliance, it seems, on a couple young players to make a difference this season is worrisome. And, young or unproven players, I think Coleman will have a good year. There's no way to know that for sure. Same with Kincaid or even Elijah Moore or Palmer for that case. And I think the turnovers as well, specifically on defense. I mean, you have to imagine the offense turnover ratio will come down a bit, but the defensive turnovers, there's so much luck involved with turnovers, especially on defense. I just cannot see them sustaining that for another season. Maybe it's not terrible, but they can't get by with what they did last year. I'm definitely worried about that.
Yeah, thanks. I would also say this for the sake of conversation that can regress and you're still looking at 11 or 12 wins. You might not be looking at the 1 seed if it does. Everything comes back to the same point, and I hate that I'm always thinking about it, but talking to Steve Palazzolo about, he brought up saving plays and things for the playoffs. The turnover luck, will it regress? James Cook, 16 touchdowns, will it regress? Last year, really should have been their year because you got all those things. Your offensive line stayed healthy the whole year. Cook's efficiency, the turnover thing being that it was offense and defense is crazy. I mean, they lost 2 fumbles last season in the regular season. What? They lost 2 fumbles. What? That was it. That don't mean like this year can't be it. Again, you want to invoke the Colts example, the Manning Colts, whose weakest team in a span of 5 or 6 years was their one Super Bowl win. They went to another and lost to New Orleans. But still, like it's not perfect. But man, just Steve talking about the Chiefs and their ability to find ways to win those close games. Was that not incredible? To win it, to give yourself the best look, these things are very helpful. Turnovers, both sides. I mean, they recovered 16 opponents' fumbles, like one a game. They lost 2 fumbles for the year. What, are you going to do that again? I mean, that's insane. Offensively, it was more by design, I would think. Like, they played different. Not, fumble luck, but they played different. Allen was less of a stallion, I think, a little bit. They had leads. I mean, they won almost every week. You can be more conservative. And so I think offensively you have more control over that. For this to lead, they were first in the league in fewest turnovers. They were third in takeaways, 32-8. I mean, to pull off 32 takeaways, you need, how do you do it? Ball hawks, but pass pressure, right? I mean, and scheme, pressure from unexpected places, forcing the quarterback into early and bad decisions, or even taking the ball away from him, these kinds of things. They did not get an interception from Douglas playing every game, and they still took the ball away 32 times. Anyway, last year was the year by these kind of metrics for you to get there. And it would just be maybe like this is what has to happen. Again, thinking of the Manning Colts, where it's more of a struggle, but you get in and then you just do what the Bills have not done, which is win at the right times. The heck with your regular season stats. Who cares? It was just a precursor to, heartbreak. Let's go to Brian next. Hi, Brian.
Hey, Mike, how are you?
Good.
Good. My only pushback is even if the Bills had lost more fumbles and even if everything didn't go our way, I would suggest that maybe 2 or 3 games max last year would have been different. We still blew everybody out of the water. I mean, the Detroit game was obviously a close game, and we had a few close games. But at the end of the day, if we lost another 5 or 7 fumbles and we were mid-pack, we still would have won the same amount of games.
I wouldn't say the same amount, and you didn't either at first, but I just said the same thing a minute ago. Like, you might not win 13 or 14, but you'll win 11. And that's a significant difference, though.
In what way would it have changed the result, though? I don't understand. Like, we still would have been probably the same seed that we were. We wouldn't have been the number 1 seed, and we would have probably had that same result.
Oh yeah.
With everything going perfect.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Like what I'm saying is more, looking forward to this year. If you don't get that same fortune, then those things are huge in games, and you might end up playing just as well otherwise, but losing a couple more, and that is a big difference. No, right? It really, what you're saying is to my other point, which was how last year was the year to capitalize on this, and they couldn't. And some of that is, the tough luck. The good luck came in the form of the turnovers. The bad luck came in the form of the Kansas City Chiefs never losing any of those nail biters. The Raiders dropping snaps and the Broncos missing field goals and everything else that happened that contribute. I sound bitter about it. I'm not. I'm amazed, Baxter, that Kansas City pulled that off. They weren't even good. It's really just, all of this is just, for torture's sake, right? Because it already happened, and there's no reason even necessarily to look back. But it's about looking forward and trying to, like the caller before was doing, what could change this year? And that, even really should change. Last year, the average, I guess if you really wanted to take Brian's exercise to the fullest, go pick the games you want where there would have been extra fumbles. I'm not going to do that. But the average fumbles lost to the NFL last year was 8.5. The Bills' 2 was the fewest in the league. Kansas City only lost 3, and Detroit. Go figure, those were the 3 best records in the league almost. And the most was Dallas at 14. Cincinnati lost 13 fumbles. They were still decent. That's pretty bad. Let's go to West here. Hi, West. West, you there?
Hey, Mike.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you for taking my call, sir.
Sure. Okay.
All right, first I want to touch on the Bills real quick, and then I have a fantasy question for you.
Okay.
I'm ridiculously optimistic. I think the Bills are going to be just fine. They have every year so far. I trust the process still, all the way from Pagula to Bean to McDermott to Allen. The offense, they set team records last year, and they have a better roster this year. McDermott always finds a way to get his defense to play well, regardless of injuries, regardless of new players coming in, old players leaving. I have no reason to think that this team won't win another 13 games and be a Super Bowl contender.
Okay.
The only disappointment coming out of the preseason is Max Harrison. That's unfortunate because I think he's going to be a big-time player in our secondary for us down the road. It's just unfortunate that he's going to miss this first month, you know.
No doubt. What's your other question?
Of development. Okay, so you're a fantasy guru. I listen to you all the time. You're in so many leagues. I've been doing it for so many years. So I have the 8th pick in my league, and I'm in a 12-team PPR. My daughter also has the 8th pick. She's in a 10-team PPR. And ironically, I just heard a little while ago that Sal has the 8th pick in his draft.
That's right.
So I've done a couple of mock drafts, Mike, and it keeps Ed. Christian McCaffrey keeps showing up.
Do it.
And how concerned are you about him this year and taking him in the first round as opposed to maybe a receiver at that 8th spot and hoping you get a good running back coming back on the snake?
I think both. Thanks, Wes. I think both are perfectly reasonable plans. I'm not afraid. I don't live in fear of injuries. McCaffrey is probably at a higher percentage risk than somebody like Genty, who's much younger. But who knows? It's just not worth the effort to try to predict that. So, and McCaffrey's been apparently incredible so far for them this summer. I'm not afraid of him at all. You could easily do that. I think there's a slight tier break after 8. And McCaffrey would be in my top 8. If you end up with Malik Neighbors or Brian Thomas Jr. or Nico Collins or Puka or 2 of those guys instead, I think that's awesome too. So I'm not afraid of McCaffrey, but I don't feel like I have to take him. Good luck. Mike Schopp here, back after this. This is WGR. The number, let's go to Zach here. Hi, Zach.
Hey, Mike. I wouldn't say I'm worried about the season upcoming here, but for the sake of conversation, if I had a few things here. I think their reliance, it seems, on a couple of young players to make a difference this season is worrisome. And, young or unproven players, I think Coleman will have a good year. There's no way to know that for sure. Same with Kincaid or even Elijah Moore or Palmer for that case. And I think the turnovers as well, specifically on defense. I mean, you have to imagine the offense turnover ratio will come down a bit, but the defensive turnovers, there's so much luck involved with turnovers, especially on defense. I just cannot see them sustaining that for another season. Maybe it's not terrible, but they can't get by with what they did last year. I'm definitely worried about that.
Yeah, thanks. I would also say this for the sake of conversation that can regress and you're still looking at 11 or 12 wins. You might not be looking at the 1 seed if it does. Everything comes back to the same point, and I hate that I'm always thinking about it, but talking to Steve Palazzolo about, he brought up saving plays and things for the playoffs. You know, the turnover luck, will it regress? James Cook, 16 touchdowns, will it regress? Last year really should have been their year because you got all those things. Your offensive line stayed healthy the whole year. Cook's efficiency, the turnover thing being that it was offense and defense is crazy. I mean, they lost 2 fumbles last season in the regular season. What? They lost 2 fumbles. What? More of your phone calls. When I was talking with Sal earlier, I brought up, because I got it's cool, the NBC press release to open the season, and all kinds of stats and trivia about this is their 20th season, the history of their Sunday Night Football package. And I told Sal the Bills are first in the league in winning percentage in the history of the show, 9-3. And it's 7-3 on Sunday nights, but there are two others. One, as Sal pointed out, is the Rams opener, the season opener in L.A. That's a Sunday Night Football broadcast on a Thursday. And the other one is not the Peacock Chargers game. It would be the Thanksgiving game in New Orleans. Also a Sunday Night Football broadcast on a Thursday. So that's how you get to 9. 7 Sunday night wins, 3 losses, and then the other 2 from Thursday night. 9-3, 750 winning percentage, best in the NFL. Joe is next. Hi, Joe.
Good afternoon, Mike. How are you today?
Fine, thank you.
So, going back to the turnover conversation, I don't think it's realistic to expect us to have the same turnover differential that we had last year. But I will say this. Can we please improve on third down efficiency? Because when I read Sal's arrow up, arrow down, more weeks than not, our defense was not great on third down, and I consider that somewhat of a turnover. I'd appreciate your thoughts.
I think it's a great point. That's really good to point out. It was as bad as you remember by their ranking. They were 29th in the league on third down, 13th on fourth down. You know me, I've got to always bring up fourth down as a play that's a real play that's allowed in football. Every stadium is screaming third down like it is something you didn't know, like it's going to do anything for you. I'm sure in a lot of cases, I'm not sure of this, but I've kind of always thought that a lot of the noise is fake. It's piped in to sort of augment that. I'm sure that wouldn't happen here, but everywhere else, third down. What do you even say on fourth down? I mean, can you go to a high? You can't scream your guts out on a hockey goal that makes the score 1-0 in the 8th game of the regular season, because you got to be able to take it somewhere else when it's big. I just hate the third down thing so much. I want to be ridiculous in how much I want to exaggerate how much I hate it, but it would sound so ridiculous I don't want to say it out loud. Like what I hate the way, the extent to which sports teams go to insult their fans and just refuse to give them credit. Can I just watch the game and not be screamed at all day? Can that be something I bought a ticket? Is there any way I can just do that I can just sit here and enjoy that? No? Okay. Imagine if, like, at a baseball game they screamed 2 strikes. Can you imagine going to, like, the Bisons and every time there were 2 strikes on a Scranton hitter, one of the Iron Pigs, the announcer would just scream 2 strikes? I mean, I would literally walk out the stadium never to return. If that's what they did at baseball games, why can't football just be normal? I know it's third down. I understand the magnitude of the whole thing. I got it. I paid to be here. I care about this. Don't most of us care? Look around in the section. The people around you. Do we care about this? Yes? Then shut up. I know. You have scoreboards everywhere. I've got my phone. I see the guy on the chain gang there. RIP chains. There's the guy with this. There's a 3. I hate it so much. And every college game and preseason game I feel like I've watched all summer, it sounds exactly the same. One of them, the game in Dublin, who played in Dublin? Iowa State, Kansas State. I refuse to even try to simulate the third down thing. So just know what it sounds like. I'm not going to do it. The guy in Dublin would say, 3rd down and 2. Okay. I mean, you could put the yards to go at the end, but you can't not scream 3rd down, or else your badge is taken from you. You don't get to do the job if you won't, I'm sure, scream 3rd down every time. That's what you have to do. That's the sacrifice you must make if you want to be in that chair. I mean, it's 100,000,000% no from me, but thanks. All right, end of rant. Sports next, and we'll talk some more. 803-0550. This is Mike Schopp on WGR.
both the 53-man and the 16-person practice squad. And for more on the roster, we do have pieces up at our website, WGR550.com. For practice today, no Christian Benford, Tre'Davious White, Curtis Samuel, Cedric Van Pran Granger, or Tylen Grable. Bills rookie safety Jordan Hancock was back at practice today, but was in a red non-contact jersey. And then good news for wide receiver Khalil Shakir. He was back at practice today, been dealing with a high ankle sprain for much of camp. And then Jordan Poyer and Jordan Phillips also both back on the practice field as they signed today with the Bills practice squad. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been suspended the first 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Bills do play the Chiefs in Week 9, but the Bills' Week 1 opponent, the Ravens, and they locked in safety Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year extension worth $100.4 million. $82 million of that is guaranteed. And then the Vikings, they got the day underway as they bring in a familiar face. They acquire wide receiver Adam Thielen and a conditional 7th in this year's draft, a 5th in 2027 as well. In exchange, they do send Carolina a 5th in 26th and a 4th in 2027. U.S. Ryder Cup captain picks are in. Keegan Bradley does not select himself. Justin Thomas, Colin Morikawa, Ben Griffin, Patrick Cantlay, Sam Burns, and Cameron Young do round out that roster. And do stay tuned. Coming up in about a half hour at 5:30, Brian Koziel will join the show to talk more on the Ryder Cup, which will get underway later on in September. And then some early afternoon baseball today. The Yankees do take down Washington 11-2. At 6:30, the Bisons are on the road versus Indianapolis. That game is on our sister station, the Bet 1520. Then just after 7 o'clock, the Jays host the Twins and the Mets host Philadelphia. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
It's Mike Schopp and the Bulldog.
Hard salami's okay, but it's not as good, right? Although maybe if you're French vanilla, you'd be like hard salami.
You mean the best vanilla?
The fake vanilla.
The delicious vanilla?
Fake vanilla.
The creamy vanilla without sand and dirt in it?
It's Mike Schopp.
I like that
sand
one.
and dirt. The beans.
Yeah.
The specks.
Yes.
Are the problem.
Yeah, it's granular.
The actual what vanilla is, the absolute worst take you've ever had. Because it's on different levels of offensiveness.
I have a lot of questions. Number one, how dare you?
And the Bulldog.
Maybe when you first made the ice cream, they were interested in making it, I don't know, good, and added cream to it to make it creamy, like thus ice cream, not ice sand, ice gravel.
People, what do we even do?
I mean, what are we talking about?
Help.
Police! Help! Police! Help!
On WGR Sports Radio 550.
I shouldn't bother to explain myself, but offensive on several levels is, and this is gratuitous because Bulldog, of course, is not here. He could call in or just walk in. But vanilla bean, like, that's real. And the fake one is fake. Like, that's what's offensive about it, is like, Bulldog is not, I have a lot of respect for his taste, and except when it comes to certain food, but he's not somebody who, like, he's not a pop music guy. You know why? Because he likes the real thing. He's not really interested in sort of performers performing songs that aren't really theirs. You know, he's real. Everything else about him is real, except, you know, the fake food in this case. But again, just taking the shot because he's not here to defend himself. Of course, if he were, I would still say it. But that clip does not perfectly. That's what clips are. That's what they do. They're short. You say the one thing, and that's what you're going to have to live with, because we're not going to let you go on and on and on about it. You see that Amari Cooper signed with the Raiders. Was it 1 year, $3 million, I think? I mean, it was not much. But finally, dominoes fell. Cooper gets a spot in Vegas. Rasul Douglas in Miami. Did Gabe Davis ever sign anywhere? I don't know that he did. I didn't hear it that he did, so maybe I missed it on my little weekend trip there. But Cooper to the Raiders, that could be something to watch. Jacoby Myers is requesting a trade or something of the sort, reportedly. You've got Brock Bowers, who's great. But new coaches, and, you know, they're going to take a shot on Cooper. You know, I'd like your thoughts on this. This is a really good, interesting, specific question that I don't know that Bulldog and I have ever sat with like this whole summer, all around it at least, if not exactly on it. But a caller earlier in making a bull case for the Bills season, we were talking about turnovers, and another caller had brought up the luck within that. And, that's a point people make. And a second guy came along and said, look, A, B, and C, they'll be great, not worried at all. And one of his A, B, and C was they have a better roster than last year. Anybody want to agree or disagree with that? So I have their week 1 starters from last season. Matt Milano was injured. He was on the team and would come back, but he was injured. So he was on the roster. The point was the roster. Last year, Dorian Williams started that game. So advantage 2025, assuming Milano's healthy and still capable, advantage 2025, check. He was on the roster. This year, he should start the opener. Epinesa out, Bosa in. How much are they going to play Joey Bosa? We don't know, but he would be first on the depth chart right now. And he was not on the roster, of course, last year, and Epinesa still is. And he's not bad. So Bosa is some amount of an upgrade, I guess. So these guys been through a lot. I don't know. Cross your fingers. But if you want to, he is on the team and he is supposedly healthy, so it's perfectly right to say this is a difference in the roster this year for last year, and you probably don't hate it. So okay, advantage 2025. Douglas, Trey White. I don't know. Douglas didn't make any plays for them last year, but it wasn't like he was getting torched. It wasn't like every week we were talking about Rasul Douglas getting beat. It wasn't, no offense, but it wasn't Kyer Elam, So I kind of think if the Bills get, hard to say this because there were no picks, 0. I almost wanted to say if they get Douglas's year out of Trey White, that's good. Hairston, it's not starters, but Hairston for Elam, right? That it better be an upgrade. But we don't know. Not only is he a rookie, an unknown, a late first-round pick, but now he's out for at least a month. And he didn't get the work in, at least on the field, to prepare for his rookie season. So it had better be a step up over what Elam was. We know that from the benefit of hindsight what he was. We don't know yet on Hairston. And the same guy picked both guys. Probably should be an upgrade, but not relevant for the first 4 weeks. Trey White is who's relevant. If he's healthy, we don't even know that. He's who's relevant for this exercise, and I'm not sure I want to say that that's a bump from Douglas. The Bills may think so. Everybody would want it to be. They didn't want Douglas back well enough to sort of lock him down. I don't know exactly what the dynamics were in that, but they could have liked him okay, and then he wants to go to market and see if he can do well, and he didn't, and then it's too late. The Bills have signed Trey, they've drafted Hairston, and it's too late. And the other one is Bishop over Hamlin. Hamlin started the Cardinals game. That was a good game, wasn't it? Last year, week 1. DeMar Hamlin started that game. This year, they're going to want Bishop to start that game next to Rapp. Rapp started last year, too. Is that an upgrade? Same thing. You want it. You need it to be. You need it to be. But Hamlin is also still on the roster. The 4 guys who started week 1 last year and will not start this year probably. Well, 2 of them are still here. Williams is gone. No, right? Is he gone? Douglas is gone. Williams is still here. Who am I confusing him with? Anyway, doesn't help. Who am I confusing him with? Spector.
Balin Spector, yes.
Yeah, sorry. So 3 of the 4 guys who started week 1 last year, but probably will not start this year, are still on the team. Douglas is the one who isn't. I think they're sort of like, and the offense is identical. Started, I mean, it can be like on one play you come out in a certain look and then that guy started week 1. That's what happened the one year with Matt Castle, right? They had Tyrod Taylor, who was the starting quarterback for that team, out wide for the first play of the season. Fun. And Castle at quarterback, and did he take the snap or just did he go in motion or something like that? But he was under center for the first play of the year and got credit in the stats for starting the game. So we're going to, leave all that out. But your offense is the same 11 guys. I mean, Cooper wasn't here yet. Coleman started the opener last year. Allen Cook, Coleman, Shakir, Knox, Kincaid, same offensive line. What's different on the offense? Hollins is gone. Palmer is in. Samuel was here. Elijah Moore is new. Cooper was brought in. What comes out in the wash at that position? I guess it's the same as the 2 examples on defense where you want to think Palmer is an upgrade. Hollins was important to them. Made plays, not a ton, but enough. Came through and was very reliable. They loved him, right? They loved having, plus he had the barefoot thing. Just on and off the field, the guy had the vibes and was a contributor. And the speculation that I remember, mostly I think from Sal, and I hope this is fair to Sal, when free agency arrived and Hollins left, was that maybe, at least maybe, it was that he wanted to play receiver more often. But, he did get to do that here, and New England has like 14 receivers. So I don't know if it's going to happen for him there either. I'm not close enough to it. The one guy, Bourne, I think, was released today. So there's a logjam there. Is the roster better? The punter is different? Is it meaningful anyway? Is the roster meaningfully better? Is it even better at all? When you're talking before, I'm really just asking. I don't have a take yet on this because, like I said, it's not something we just sort of locked in on this offseason. I don't remember doing it. Who else is gone of significance? Your running backs are exactly the same. Your offensive line starters and backups are the same, which is crazy. I mean, that's rare. But they've been very good and fortunate in that area. You've got your new defensive rookie toys. Offensively, there isn't really anything. You've got a 6th-round tight end, right? Hawes. But defensively, you've got important pieces you want at least for the long term. And your odds are not we got 4 guys here to talk about, maybe 5. And if you're lucky, 3 of them will be at least good. Maybe 1 or 2 of them will be great. Like you had in the Milano draft, Trey White, they had real home runs, A-plus picks. 803-0550 for your calls. Is the roster better? Is it meaningfully better? Is it maybe, well, I'm not trying to give us credit, but maybe why we didn't bang that out is because it's not that different. It's not different enough, and it's close. It's not different enough to be that interesting, maybe, to talk about. What you want for the Bills, I mean, of course you always want better, and you turn to the draft for that, to that end. But what you kind of want is just to sort of keep it going. You don't want the roster to get worse. You don't want, 3 or 4 starters to leave in free agency and then, you're scrambling a little bit or whatever it is. You don't want big changes because of the success they've had. That's just, obvious. So does it have to be better? It just doesn't. You just don't want it to be worse. And I'm not going to say that it's worse. It's close enough to the same for me, I think. Your thoughts, 803-0550 on that if you've got anything. I see we're having a hat bracket.
That has begun today.
Whose idea?
This was Josh, the morning show producer, Josh Schmidt.
It's a fun idea. So I was on the road last weekend, and he texted me to ask me if I would submit he was funny to mention to me that visors count, because that's all I wear in the, unless it's wintertime, it's visors for me. Hats don't even really fit me anymore. I don't know. Like, I was never the perfect size unless it was the perfect hat.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm sort of like 7 3/4 to 7 7/8. 7 7/8 is too big. I mean, I'm not Bruce Bochy, but wasn't he like the biggest head in baseball?
I believe that's right.
7 3/4 is too tight. I wear my hair a little bit long. I haven't been like comfortable in a hat in a long time. So Josh texts and he says, if you want to participate, send me, wouldn't he have said your 2 favorites?
Yeah, I believe it was either your 2 favorites, your 2 best, what have you.
I'm hoping that, and you're participating, you're up now. I'm hoping that everybody...
I'm getting beat by Bulldog right now.
It's a golf hat of yours against he has a Bison's baseball hat.
Yeah, the one I submitted I like better. I don't really have a ton of fun hats. I was being made fun of this morning, though, because I should have used the Texas hat I'm wearing now, which is just a black hat with the orange Longhorn, and I'm like, that's not much better. I'm still going to get beat.
But why wouldn't you have picked that?
In my head, I was like, I don't want to use team ones. And then I found out everyone was using team ones.
Is it like that?
It's a lot of them, yeah.
So I thought about it. I had 4 days because I didn't get home until Monday night, and then I texted him 2 pictures. I'm not up yet. My hats are in there. Did everybody do 2? Do we have that many people here? Did everybody do 2?
So, yeah.
How did that happen? When did that happen? Look at us. So, wow. I'm amazed. Great. So I sent him my favorite 2, but my definition of favorite isn't my most often worn. In fact, I never wear the one hat because hats don't fit. That hat is too tight. It's 7 3/4, but it's too tight on my head. It's uncomfortable. My head would hurt. If I wore that Browns hat for the whole show, my head would hurt. So why are we doing that? Visors, they're great. And this flow, you wouldn't even see it. St. Louis Browns. I own that hat because my great uncle pitched for 8 years for the St. Louis Browns. So it's different and it's important. Satchel Paige was on his team. The 52 Browns. And that's really cool to me. His brother, my grandfather, is alive and well in Florida. We're having fun with it in fantasy. Well, I don't need to say anymore, but because of his, never mind. But his brother pitched. His brother died, my great uncle Cliff, in 1966, and so I never knew him. But I've always cared about that being a part of our family's history. So my one submission, one of my 2, is this St. Louis Browns hat, which I love. I don't wear it; doesn't fit, but I love it. It's not going to win against these Bills hats. Sneaky Joe, the first one up this morning, was the number 1 seed, and it's just like a white hat with Bills script. That's the number 1 seed. I'm doomed. That's the most interesting hat in the whole thing. It's just Bills. Okay. I'm going to lose because half the hats in this thing might be Bills hats. Let's just make it a Bills hat bracket if we're going to do that. Not criticizing. It's a fun idea. I'm glad for it. So St. Louis Browns. Do people want to? Are they going to even know what that? It's the Cardinals STL, but it's brown and orange. 1, 2 is, if they're not going to vote for the St. Louis Browns, they're not going to vote for a Toronto hockey team hat.
No, yeah, that one's going to get you hurt. Yeah,
but I love it, and I do wear that hat in the winter, and I always get comments. I love it. It's green and white, Toronto St. Pat's, long green winter hat with the ball at the top. It's a toque. My St. Pat's toque. And I have that because in 2005 or 6, somewhere in there, maybe earlier, there was I went on a fan trip to Toronto for a Sabres game, Sabres-Leafs. And there was a Leafs legend named Red Horner who was being honored that night. I don't know if it was just him or if it was old players from their history. And because of whatever night this was, they gave out these awesome St. Pat's hats. It was given out at the door. Did the Sabres ever give out hats? Imagine getting a hat when you walk in. Maybe it's happened. Shouldn't assume that it hasn't, but It seems like maybe above them. Leafs give out St. Pat's hats, this beautiful long green toque. I love it immediately. I mean, it's never like my team. Who are the St. Pats? But I've got it. And the guy dies right before the game. Horner.
Ooh.
Like the game is a 7:00 game, and it might have even like been on the bench, or there was like some activity around the benches, and this is how I remember it. It's 20 years ago or more, but we're all just kind of wondering, why isn't the game happening? And, then you find out they did play. But, that's that story. So I put the hat has, some meaning to me, and I was there for that. So and I wear it. So I picked those are my two favorites. I've got 40 NFL and Major League Baseball visors. None of them is really my favorite. You watch me on here, I wear a different one almost every day. To the Nationals today. But it's just a thing. It doesn't. I just have visors from the stadiums I've been to. That's what my collection is. So those are my two hats, and they're both surely to get dumped in the first round by everybody's Bills hats.
The stories there alone, that might do well for you.
I like the stories, but they're not on the web. Or they're not on Twitter. Like the hat pictures don't come with stories.
No, that's right. That's where you're going to have to quote tweet.
I'm going to do my part here.
Yeah.
Spreading the word. There. Okay, so I'm glad to be in the game. Brian Koziol coming up next. Keegan Bradley, the U.S. Ryder Cup captain, picks not himself, picks other players to play for the team. Interesting dilemma he might have had. We'll talk to Brian about it after a short break. And the update, this is Mike Schopp on WGR.
U.S. Ryder Cup captain picks are in. We'll get more on that here in just a moment. Stay tuned. Brian Koziel will join the show. The Ryder Cup will get underway later on in September. For the Bills, they were back on the practice field today as their initial 53-man roster and the 16-person practice squad are set. No practice today for Christian Benford, Trey White, Curtis Samuel, Cedric Van Pran-Granger, and Tylen Grable. Good news for Bills rookie Jordan Hancock. He was back at practice in a red non-contact jersey. And then wide receiver Khalil Shakir, who's been dealing with a high ankle sprain, was back to practice along with Jordan Poyer and Jordan Phillips, who those two both signed to the practice squad. Chiefs wide receiver Rashee Rice has been suspended the first 6 games for violating the league's personal conduct policy. The Bills do play the Chiefs in Week 9, but will start the season against the Ravens, who locked in safety Kyle Hamilton to a 4-year extension worth $100.4 million. $82 million of that is guaranteed. And then some early afternoon baseball. The Yankees do take down Washington 11-2. At 6:30, the Bisons are on the road versus Indianapolis. That game is on our sister station, the Bet 1520. And then just after 7 o'clock, the Jays host the Twins, and the Mets host Philadelphia. That's your Paddock Chevrolet Sports Update. Paddock Chevrolet celebrating 90 years of being your hometown dealership. I'm Zach Jones for WGR Sports Radio 550.
All right, a quick sojourn over to golf. Brian Koziel, Tee to Green host, with me now on the Wester hotline. So this is a fun one, for the dinner table, right? You've got Keegan Bradley, major winner, who's having, I think, Brian will correct me if I'm wrong, a career resurgence and has been excellent of late. And he's the captain of the Ryder Cup team, which is usually given to older guys. But he seems like, by all accounts, to be worthy of a player's spot on the team. It was up to him, and he passed. He said, words to the effect of, the best way I think I can do the job of being the captain is to not play. So Brian, he thought about it, maybe thought about it all the time, and maybe also heard from everybody with their opinions for a long while here.
Yes, that's definitely the story of today's selections. Not necessarily who he took or who he left off, but it was the fact that he decided to not take himself. And Keegan, if you follow the Ryder Cup or you know his story, he's a guy who's obsessed about being on the Ryder Cup team. He lives for this event. He loves this event. 2 years ago, he was left off, which ended up being maybe just as big of a story as it is this year. That when the captain's picks were made for the USA team 2 years ago, the shocking one was that Bradley was left out. And it was kind of the storyline of, is this the good old boys club? They picked some players that maybe hadn't had as good of a years, kind of the Spieths and the Thomases of the world that are obviously very popular, but they hadn't necessarily performed as well. And Bradley had been playing great. And part of the reason that the United States has decided to, the PGA of America, expand, they used to just have 3 captains picks. They've expanded it to 6 now, is that they said, hey, we aren't necessarily getting the quote, hot players, the guys that are playing their best golf in July and August heading into the Ryder Cup. And then last year, Bradley was left off and he was devastated. There was even the call on the Netflix series where they show Zach Johnson calling Keegan and he's in tears with his wife essentially. And so you've got all this. And then it feels like, there's a make good. The PGA of America realizes Keegan should have been picked. So we'll make him captain because we know how much he cares about it and how he'll go all in and doing all the things that they want. In terms of, being excited about it, pumping up the event, promoting it, which is a big part of what the captain does, and go all in. And now all of a sudden, he, down the stretch of this season, was playing after Scottie Scheffler, who's in his own league right now, as good as any American golfer, I would argue. And then today was going to be the day, okay, does he pick himself? The last time a captain played was 1964, Arnold Palmer. Back then, though, there were no captain's picks. It was just the top 12. There was, much, much, much less to do. He didn't have to do Ralph Lauren uniform things and interviews and all these corporate, events and in media. Back then they just showed up and played pretty much. So
also, it wasn't really against all of Europe.
That's correct. It was just Great Britain back then. Mm-hmm. Good point. There's all this in play, and people peek at, can he captain and can he play at the same time? That obviously was the biggest thing. And in the end, I guess I'll look at it this way. I don't think they actually have the best team because I think Keegan on the team is playing the best. However, he thought the best way that he could captain the team was by not playing. So I respect that decision. I guess I was a little surprised because you wonder how much pressure the PGA of America would give to say, hey, Keegan, like you are going to bring eyeballs more by playing than being necessarily the face of this team. And in the end, he decided to step aside and just be the captain. So I guess team over individual, I guess maybe that's a good message, I guess, to send.
Yeah, I think this is a better story this way.
Yeah.
I'll watch it either way. So quickly, the Zach Johnson point, I'm seeing references on Twitter to Bradley should call Zach Johnson just to tell him he's not invited. Like, was it seen as bad form for Johnson to do that 2 years ago?
No. In fact, all the players that essentially, I guess you'd say are, under consideration usually do get a call to say, we
yes or no
consider you. Yes or no, essentially, and in the politest way that an uncomfortable phone conversation can be had for someone on the other end that is extremely disappointed. So, and these guys see each other all the time playing tour events, so like I'm sure it's not comfortable. And the younger the player, like Zach Johnson's not, Tom Watson here, like. They're probably friendly out on the golf course. They're playing in the same tournaments at times. So, like, I think that's got to be uncomfortable. And Bradley, now even younger, for him to have this. But there really wasn't that, like, major, oh, my God, I can't believe this guy didn't get picked. It's more so just Keegan not picking himself. I think maybe lended itself. So we're not talking about anybody that maybe was left off other than the fact that Keegan decided to not take himself. But, I think it'll make for some interesting storylines here. And the lines, by the way, I know you're a numbers guy.
Yes.
I checked this morning. The betting odds, the United States was at minus 125 on MGM. And an hour later after the captain's picks, around noon, they were still minus 125. I just looked, at least on my FanDuel app, and it's minus 130. So it's essentially today's picks have done very little to that, which I know you always find interesting, with the reaction.
I mean, it's happened, but who would ever bet the U.S. to win the Ryder Cup anymore? Minus money? Like, don't they? I know. What are the last 10 results? Like, are we 2-8, something like that? Maybe in the last 10, something like that.
I got to think it's playing at Bethpage, and they have Scheffler. Other than that, I mean, Europe is so much deeper. They're going to announce their Luke Donald, the captain. They're going to announce their captain's picks next week, but
he won't pick himself.
No, he will not. But I mean, other than Scheffler and JJ Spawn, a lot of these guys are not playing. In the last month or so, they're not playing great. I guess Cameron Young, I should say, but Schauffele didn't even make the Tour Championship. Colin Morikawa, who I thought maybe would get left off, ends up going in. I guess maybe just big time experience, 2-time major winner. Henley and English are solid players who deserve to be on the team. They were automatic qualifiers, but they've been just kind of steady. Cantlay is an interesting person. Some fans don't like watching Cantlay because he takes forever when he plays. Burns has been up and down, but Burns apparently, they love him to play with Scheffler because they're best friends. He's a very good putter. So there's arguments to be made. Griffin won twice. JT, kind of the fiery guy out there. DeChambeau, of course, qualified too. So, I don't really have an argument against any of the 12 that ultimately are on there. So in the end, I guess Keegan did his job. If he's going to leave himself off, I don't have a huge, displeasure with any of the 12 that are there.
Okay. My guy Spawn made it. Was he automatic? Was he one of the 6?
He was automatic, yes. Yes, he was the automatic. Yep.
All right, that'll be cool. DraftKings USA minus 145.
Ooh, so that's moving up.
I mean,
interesting.
Europe at plus money, Brian.
I think Europe is so much deeper. So they already have their 6 also. It's McIlroy, McIntyre, Fleetwood, who just won, Rose, who won the previous week, Rasmus Højgaard, and Tyrrell Hatton, who just finished up playing well on Live. Then their next 6,
Lowry.
Lowry, very consistent this year. Straka, who won twice. Oberg, Hovland, Fitzpatrick. I mean, they're so deep here, And then 12 is Matt Wallace, and kind of what I have been reading is most people are thinking they're going to leave Wallace off, and then Rahm will be the spot that goes there. Yeah, don't forget they have Rahm. They're so deep. Like I on paper, the only thing I can think of is the home coast advantage as to why the U.S. is favored.
Yep. It's New York. It's It's not even like central Missouri. It's New York. It'll be fiery.
Yeah, and Bethpage for sure is a spot that I'm sure there's people listening. Some people that have played that course, they know kind of how that's really since when the U.S. Open came there in 2002, how it's really kind of turned now into a gem of New York State golf. And, now they've had multiple U.S. Opens, a couple of PGAs, and now a Ryder Cup. So
very cool.
Still love that, New York State residents can play it for under $100 still. It's impossible. You got to sleep. I've seen the videos of people sleeping in their cars trying to get on before they close the course here soon. But, it's still a gem of New York golf for sure.
I was on Long Island a couple of summers ago for my son's lacrosse. And like Farmingdale, maybe, we were at a college, I think. And, you have like this sprawling area of land, like 20 lacrosse fields. You've been to these kinds of things. They just sort of look like they go on forever. And somebody pointed out to me, you see those trees? Like, I see those trees. Like, right behind it is Bethpage. And there was no way to see in. I mean, there could have been had I driven to a place where maybe I could even drive up the driveway or something. But, like, I kept staring at the trees, just knowing that, like, Bethpage, and it's more than one golf course, but was right behind it. Never went in there.
Yeah, there's 5 there, and if anybody ever wants to go, like, the black is still obviously the gem, but you got to be really, and I'm saying, like, if you aren't a quote good golfer, like, you're setting yourself up for pain. I know you want to play it, but they've got all the colors. They've got a red course, a green course, a yellow course, blue. But it's a really nice complex, and even some of the other courses, like, you can play in the $30 and $40 range, which the complex is really, really nice. They renovated the whole area. It's a really, really nice spot. I wish we had something around here that had like 5 courses, but it's really, really cool.
Brian, I've got 1 minute. The Fleetwood win was pretty cool.
It really was. I mean, obviously he's come so close. He's won on the European Tour and had great success in international events like the Ryder Cup, but he's so likable. Just so classy in terms of how he's handled not getting these wins here when he's had these leads going into it. So, I thought it was cool that he did it in the biggest prize event that he could win. A huge paycheck for that huge win. Even Justin Rose, who's, I respect a lot, and he's out there videoing like it's his kid. I love it. That was a great scene.
Exactly a month away, 26th of September through the 28th on Long Island. Brian, thanks for today.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Brian Koziol, Tee to Green, Saturday mornings. Ryder Cup in a month. It's a better story with Bradley not playing. Ask your kids, what would you do? Ask your your spouse tonight. It's a good conversation. What would you do? Mike Schopp here. I'll be right back. This is WGR. today. Early on, and I'll have this chat for you coming up, my conversation with Sal included a couple of little notes about 20 years of Sunday Night Football. They sent out all kinds of stats that I love. I mean, this is the kind of thing, if I'd thought of it, just cared enough, I would have researched on my own. I'd like to see all these for Monday night games and all of it. Most touchdowns, most passing, rushing yards, all that kind of stuff. Most touchdowns scored all time on NBC Sunday Night Football, which again includes certain other primetime broadcasts of theirs on different nights of the week, like Thanksgiving night now. So not to get technical. Antonio Brown. Former Bill, Antonio Brown, 23. That's the most touchdowns scored on NBC Sunday Night Football in history. Zeke has the most rushing yards. It makes sense. Dallas is on the most times. I mean, DeMarco Murray is fourth all-time in rushing yards on Sunday Night Football, so come on. Dallas has, was it 61? 61 games. Second is Green Bay at 48. Lots of good stuff. Earlier, I was talking about, after a call brought it up, Bills, better roster this year than last year or no? And this is what happens when there aren't two of us. I just did not think of Hoyt and Ogunjobi that, would be on the field, at least some, if they weren't suspended for 6 games. So any conversation about whether the roster is better or not has to include at least Michael Hoyt. I mean, duh. But I was just sort of locked in on starting lineups, and that's where I went with it. So that's definitely a key point. It's defense again, and I thought more about the draft picks, which mostly were defense too. Their offense is the same, except for I think, probably role-playing receiver role. Sorry. Palmer Hollins wasn't just a role player, played a lot. But Cooper and Hollins, Palmer coming in. And Elijah Moore. I'm very curious to see how much he's on the field. And there's Shavers here too, but I would think he'd be last among the receivers that made it. The conversation will never end. More of what Sal had to say. Jordan Poyer is back. We got into that too. That's next here on WGR.